Let me ask you something. You know, when trying to get a fast time in AT Raidao challenge quest, it is very important to get the Dragonator to fall on top of him, right? So my question is, what is the most consistent way to go about this? A. Stand next to the pillar and wait for Raidao to get close. B. Go fight Raidao and hope for an opportunity mid-fight. Or C. Pray to RNG that Raidao spawns right below it. All of these alternatives are manageable, but have their drawbacks. With A, you might have Raidao just being cheeky and snipe you from afar, or he'll attack your Palico, making you lose a lot of time. With B, you save time by fighting Raidao right away, but might end up never getting close to the pillar. And with C, this one straight up depends on RNG. You might get it sometimes, and sometimes you won't. So what alternative ensures the most controlled scenario? The answer would be D. Using a luring pod to force Raidao into his flight animation, which is easily intercepted by dropping the pillar on him. I would be a terrible teacher. Even when we do have to wait a bit for the lure to take effect, the predictability, consistency, and control behind this method will have you getting the pillar every single time. And this, my dear viewer, is the beginning of what speedrunners call scripting. We've all seen it, right? Speedrunners just walking all over a monster and you're like, how are they even doing this? Welp, what I'm about to show you is part of the secret. With the release of AT Raidao, more and more people have put their skills to the test in order to get that shiny pendant that you can attach to your weapon. And in order to get all the pendants, you have to get an A rank on this fight. This has encouraged a lot of people to try their hand at a challenge run, in this case, defeating Raidao before the 13-minute mark. Thing is, what happens when your skill alone is just not enough to overcome this challenge? Scripting is this almost ethereal concept that speedrunners use in order to optimize every aspect of their hunts. It is this sort of master plan that takes extremely careful consideration of every resource that they have at their disposal, from their build, their items and their weapons qualities, to the environmental hazards and the monster's behavior. It is what makes the difference between simply fighting the monster to the best of your ability and actually planning every moment-to-moment decision that is made during the encounter. And you might be wondering, but Sun, isn't fighting the monster just good enough? Why would I want to overcomplicate things? Well, I think that simply fighting the monster is already as fun as it can get, but we have to remember that we're trying to kill the monster as fast as possible. And I would argue that for the average player, simply fighting the monster will only prolong the encounter. So how does scripting help us to have faster hunts, even when we are far from being a speedrunner? If we are to be realistic, we cannot expect to do scripting at the level that speedrunners do. But we can create small scripts that can ensure that we are in complete control of the fight, even if for a moment. Not only that, but I also think that scripting can be a fun way to explore your creativity within the gameplay of Monster Hunter, since people can come up with their own ideas and still have very good results. One of the problems of hunting monsters is how we have to manage the resources of our weapon while dealing with the monster's behavior. If you've played Monster Hunter for a while, you'll quickly notice that while the monster is moving, it is a lot harder to keep on the offensive compared to what happens when the monster is toppled or stunned. This immediately gives you an appreciation for the openings created by such things. When the monster is down or is unable to move, you basically have free reign to attack the monster. Monster Hunter has a wide range of effects with which you can hamstring the monster's movement. Some of these are created by part breaks or ailments, and others can be inflicted more actively, like with traps or when you flash monsters out of the air. In other words, we have a lot of tools to control the monster, and as we stated before, more control means more damage, and more damage means faster hunts. So the way that I like to describe scripting is by thinking of it as a timeline. From the beginning to the end of the hunt, there is a series of events that you want happening during the fight. You then organize the order of these events by following some priorities. These will be determined by the weapon you use and the monster that you're fighting. Let's now imagine that these events are represented by these blocks below the timeline, and I will treat these events as resources that I can distribute throughout the hunt. A simple script could look like this. I open the fight with a sneak attack, followed by a shock trap and finishing with a stun. Let's look at a practical example. Let's imagine that I'm fighting Hirabami while using the sword and shield. Hirabami is a monster that likes staying in the air, so my first goal during this fight would be to bring it down somehow. So I go to my timeline and I'm going to start with a sneak attack. Sneak attack will always bring Hirabami down to the ground, so it would be a very good way to start the fight. Now, I know that after Hirabami roars, it is probably going to try to fly again, so to prevent that, I will use a shock trap to intercept it. I also know that Sword and Shield has the ability to stun, so maybe I can put that up next in my timeline. I will try building KO damage during the shock trap by weaving in a couple of shield attacks. This way, right after the shock trap ends, Hirabami will get stunned and will continue to be on the ground. And that marks the end of my script. The rest of the fight I cannot really control, and I will simply try fighting the monster to the best of my ability. That said, I will put a couple of guidelines or situational decisions moving forward, in this case, flash spots. Let's now see our script in motion. I start the fight with a sneak attack and quickly move towards the monster's head. I get a couple of hits and a charged chop. Then I prepare to block its roar. This will allow me to activate Offensive Guard. I block the roar and immediately put the shock trap down. I attack again, this time getting some shield bashes in between, and just as the trap is about to wear off, I focus strike the wound and use the shield bash to get more KO damage. I come in clutch with a back hop to dodge the enraged roar, and a counterattack with a jumping shield bash. The stun goes off, and this marks the end of my opening script for Hirabami. From here on, it's just me fighting the monster as best as I can. By the end of the fight, I intercept Hirabami with a flash bud, and that allows me to go for the kill. As you can see, the opening segment allowed me to have almost complete control of the fight. I was able to deal damage constantly, without interruptions. It was only after my script ended that the monster fought back and I had to adapt to its behavior. Now, how do I know that this is a good script? A key aspect of scripts is that they have to be replicable. A script will allow you to enact the same sequence over and over and over. While the average player can't really do complex scripts at the level of a speedrunner, I firmly believe that they can apply the same principle to a lesser degree in order to improve in the game and to have faster, better hunts. So to summarize, the most important aspects of scripting are knowing your weapon. What are the qualities of my weapon? Do I have to manage resources? Knowing the monster. Is there any important part breaks I should be aware of? Is the monster weak to anything in particular? Preparation. What items should I bring? Traps? Flashbots? Do I have to be aware of any specific skills from my build? Should I play around them? Planning. How will my script start and how will I execute it? And lastly, replicating. Can my script be executed the same way every single time? It is important to note that even after you've thought and planned the script very carefully, it will all come down to execution. You can get very creative and things might look really cool in your mind, but if you can't execute it consistently, it's probably a sign that you need to change it. Let's go back to my Hirabami example. There's one element of the script that I didn't mention, but it is crucial that it is present, otherwise the whole thing falls apart. If you looked at the clip again, do you think you could find what it is? That's right! It's the wound! From the beginning of the encounter with Hirabami to the moment the shock trap wears off, I am working on the damage threshold needed to expose the wound on the head. This allows me to go for a focus strike with a shield uppercut, which has the biggest amount of KO out of all the Sword and Shield moveset. With that piece now fitting into the puzzle, my script can actually be complete, and I can replicate the sequence as many times as I want. This is the perfect example of the importance behind part break thresholds, and it is why people that are more experienced in this game are constantly raving about this. It's because it allows us to script more complex and detailed sequences like these. In other words, you can do very simple scripts by using items or ailments, but if you want to step into the next level, you have to take part break thresholds, flinches, and trips into consideration. Before the 6th gen of Monster Hunter, part breaks were only obtainable after attacking a specific part of the monster repeatedly. The interesting part about this is that for some monsters, breaking a specific part can mean a guaranteed topple, which is why having monster knowledge is so highly valued in this game. With the introduction of focus and the way that it interacts with wounds through focus strike, part breaking can be a lot more deliberate now. I have a whole video discussing how this has impacted the gameplay of Monster Hunter, but for now what you need to know is that once a wound is open, a focus strike can trigger the part break interaction. Let's look at a simple example. F.Anjanath. In Iceborne, attacking the legs repeatedly would lead to a part break. This guarantees a topple. Not only that, but from now on, if you continue attacking the legs, you can make Anjanath trip. In Wilds, the same thing happens. However, I have two options. I can either expose the wound and keep attacking it until the part breaks, or I can simply use my focus strike to break the wound and force the part break interaction. This opens a whole array of possibilities, since wounds mean that I can effectively make setups. As a quick example, what if I started the fight with no script, simply fighting Anjanath until I managed to open a wound on the leg? Since I know that breaking the wound is a guaranteed topple, I can plan my script around it. I'm gonna do a mounting topple into a leg part break, followed by a pitfall trap and finishing with a stun. And for this example, let's assume that I'm playing with the charge blade. Let's see how that would look like. In this clip, you can see that I've been fighting Anjanath for a while. I made sure to prepare all the resources of my weapon. In this case, I have charged the shield and have Savage Axe activated. The moment I notice the wound appear, I start fishing for mounting attacks. Okay, we want to get a quick topple. I'm not really going to open every wound that I can. After the mounting attack, while Anjanath is on the ground, I work some damage on the legs to prepare for that part break. While he's getting up, I focus strike the wound on the leg, activating the part break interaction and getting another topple. Following my script, it is time for the pitfall trap. While the trap is in effect, the monster is then affected by a paralysis, and I continue to dish out the damage. The moment Anjanath is finally getting out of the trap, I intercept it with an elemental discharge to the head, which is enough to stun it. That marks the end of my script. Now, even when we accomplished what we wanted to do, if we review the elements of my script and the events that actually happened during the hunt, we will quickly realize that there's a lot of mistakes here. After the mounting topple, I attack the legs a little bit to get the wound on the left leg close to breaking, but I end up part breaking the other leg. Since Anjanath was in the middle of his stand-up animation, the topple interaction from the part break doesn't trigger. This is a general rule that you should try to follow. When monsters are recovering from certain effects, especially when they are standing up after a topple, further part breaks will not trigger topples or flinches. This is important because what this means in my example is that I won't really benefit from that interaction. I could have had 2 topples from attacking the legs, but now I'm left with only 1. Luckily, I break the wound that I had opened before on the left leg, and that allows me to continue with my script. Here is where things get really messy though. I put my trap down, and the few first hits to Anjanath's head stun it. You cannot really see it here because his head is like off camera, but that is the stun animation inside the pitfall trap. Not only that, but the attack right after the stun paralyzes it, which only makes it worse. Now, why is this bad? When you are making scripts, you want to make sure that you get the full benefits of a topple or an ailment. What happened with this example is that too many effects overlapped in the same sequence, which means that I am interrupting the duration of one thing to start the timer on another effect. The 3 events that happened after I put the trap were the pitfall activated, then a stun, then a paralysis. Usually, each of these effects lasts around 7 seconds, plus 1 or 2 more depending on the monster's recovery animation. If my execution was cleaner, I should have been able to fully take advantage of the trap, then have the paralysis activate, take full advantage of that, and then go for a stun. That way, instead of controlling the monster for around 15 seconds, I could have prolonged the time that I was in control of the fight for around 25 seconds. Which, by the way, in Monster Hunter, is a huge amount of time to be attacking the monster non-stop. This is why, again, monster knowledge has such a big impact in this game. Not every monster will get paralyzed at the same rate. Same goes for stun, and not every monster has the same thresholds for the parts that you can break of them. So, going to the quote-unquote timeline builder that we showed earlier, we can now realize that not every resource that we can use for a script comes from the hunter, but they can also come from the monster. All things considered, simply because you have all of these options doesn't mean that you have to use all of them. In the end, my goal with this video is to give less experienced players a basic understanding of the alternatives that they have at their disposal that can help them get faster, better hunts. More experienced players, especially speedrunners, will obviously want to consider as many factors as possible in order to get faster times, and even then, not always use all of them because they still have to make sure to kill the monster as fast as possible, something that is not always accomplished by having the most controlled fight. For the average player, however, sometimes the problem is the fact that you don't have nearly as enough control over the fight to even deal damage comfortably. And that is where these small scripts can come in handy. Small, simple sequences that you can always replicate in order to get the advantage during the fight, even if for a moment. So yes, the average player can use speedrunner tactics. To summarize, scripting is a way of planning a hunt in which you can create a sequence of events based on the weapon you're using and the monster you are fighting. This sequence can be visualized like a timeline where, once your conditions are met to execute the script, you can replicate the same sequence every time you hunt. Practicing these small scripts can help you have faster, better hunts, and it will make you improve in the game overall, because you will be engaging with the core mechanics of the game, such as properly preparing for a hunt, managing thresholds with things like ailments or part breaks, and timing the different interactions so that you can get the most benefit out of them. It also really encourages creativity in all aspects of the game, from set building to gameplay execution, which I really think can allow you to explore different forms of player expression. Lastly, I want to clarify that this form of scripting is a very simplified version of it. But if you want to see some really crazy stuff, go watch some speedruns! There are some really amazing people out there doing incredible runs of even the most challenging content in the game. And you would be surprised of just how creative they get when they go about these runs. In fact, one of them helped me review the ideas behind this video to make sure that I wasn't just talking out of my ass. So a huge thanks to Jussie for helping me out with this one, since it wasn't easy talking about such an abstract idea. Go give him a sub. And by the way, would you like to see a speedrunner teaching somebody else how to script? Well then, keep an eye out for Monster Hunter's channel, because he's gonna be making a video where he shows how to do this, but with a lot more detail. So you will be able to see just how deep the rabbit hole goes when it comes to scripting. And with this, we reach the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that this topic was interesting to you. And beyond that, I really hope that the next time that we have a time attack challenge, this video is what helps you to overcome the odds. Forever grateful if you decide to do any of the things shown in these stickers. I'd love to read comments from all types of players about this topic, since I find it quite interesting myself. As always, my name is Sun, and until next time.